great to have you here in the Valley. I did take a look at the meeting website last night. Sounds like you are, taking advantage of what we have to offer here. I apologize that we couldn't work out better weather for while you were here, but try to power through it in any event. So what I thought I would do a little bit is talk about our university, simply because it provides a little bit of context. I've worked at large and small universities in my career, but I've been here for the last 16 years, and so the things that we do may be relevant to some of you, not all of them to all of you, but I'll try to make them as applicable as I can. One of the things I wanted to start with is just the nature of our institution. This is our charter that's up on the screen. It was developed over a decade ago, and it really resonates with everyone at our university and our community, and so much so that it is now chiseled in granite on all 4 of our campuses here in the Valley. But one of the things I wanted to point out about this is that we think a little differently than many universities and differently than other universities for which I have worked, in the sense that we want to be very inclusive. We're in the Sun Belt, we're in a historically underserved area educationally, and so providing opportunity to as many people as we possibly can, anyone that can benefit from a college education, is part of what we do. And our charter says that we want to be judged by whom we include and how they succeed, rather, of course, than perhaps by how many people we exclude in order to get very high rankings in terms of selectivity. The other thing that's important about this charter is how we try to take responsibilities for the communities that we serve in a variety of ways, as noted here. So a little bit about our built environment. We're a big place. You are on the largest and oldest of the 4 ASU campuses in the Valley. We have 4 of them. There are about 1,219 buildings total. We have about 30 million gross square feet, so it's a big place, and at any given moment there's something that isn't working the way it should be. So certainly for Tim and his team, that's a real challenge that we have. I'd also mention that sustainability is incredibly important to what we do. At the first school of sustainability in the country, offered the first PhD in sustainability. We have our global, our Walton Center for Global Health, which sits down at the other end of the university here. Very distinctive building. I think I may have a picture of it, but you'll get a chance to see it, I understand, in your tour tomorrow, so that's great. But it's a big place, and so being able to do things well at scale is certainly something that's important to us here. We're fast growing. We have about 68,000 students that study on one of our 4 campuses, campus immersion in ASU speak. We also have another roughly, we have 86,000 students in person and about 68,000 online through ASU Online. Then we have something we call learners, which are people who are involved in lifelong learning and other than 4-credit activities. And so we have hundreds of thousands of learners, and we have pathways for those learners to convert what they learn through those non-credit programs into a degree program if they wish. But here are the 4 campuses there: our downtown Phoenix campus, our Polytechnic or Learning Through Doing campus in far southeast Mesa. We have our West Valley campus at the very northwest edge of the city of Phoenix. And then, of course, the Tempe campus, where we sit today. And then as we continue to expand our activities, we have found the need to be located physically in other places. So we have a center in Washington, D.C., the Barrett O'Connor Center, that's about 4 blocks from the White House. And then we have several buildings now in Los Angeles. The picture you have here is the former Herald Times Examiner LA newspaper building that is historic, but it's been converted for modern educational use. And then a few years ago, we acquired the Bermuda Institute of Ocean Sciences, which, yes, is in Bermuda. We also have some ocean-related activities in Hawaii. And about 8 years ago, we acquired the Thunderbird School of Global Management. So we have sites now all around the world. Typically, those are leased sites rather than owned. But I remember a couple of weeks ago, we were worrying about a hurricane in Bermuda at the same time we were worrying about an earthquake in Los Angeles. And I'm like, okay, we've really arrived now. So there's always something going on and a challenge in terms of managing the built environment. So I know you had a panel yesterday that talked about trying to remain current on maintenance and what the bad things that happen when you can't with deferred maintenance. So won't go too far into that other than, with 30 million gross square feet, huge challenge for us, just the same way as it is for you. At any given time, for about the last decade, we've had at least $1 billion, billion with a B, of capital projects in some phase of planning, design, or construction. So many things going on at once. And as CFO, one of the things I always worry about, are we finding enough resources to continue to reinvest and maintain our existing built environment at the same time we're out there trying to expand what we do both programmatically and in terms of the scale of the institution. Next year, I think we'll probably hit $1 billion of annual sponsored research expenditures. Research, incredibly capital intensive, so that's always a draw on available resources. We're also growing very rapidly in terms of enrollment, so that's a challenge. And we also want to be more residential in nature. Historically, we started as a normal school and then became a teacher's college, only been a university, at least in name, since late 1958. And so we're very young, and our growth curve is actually upward. It's kind of like a hockey stick. And so that means we've got all these demands, including demands for living and learning facilities. At the same time, we're trying to take care of what we already have, some of which has been around, since the 19th century. So it's a challenge. This is just a breakdown of capital expenditures on the bars between new construction and taking care of what we have. And then the lines there are the numbers of projects. And do we have this balance right? Probably not. Probably, need to continue to find more money for taking care of what we have, or figure out ways to be smarter about doing that. So here's a map of the valley here, and you can see our 4 campuses as well as what we call our innovation zones. Our innovation zones we define as places where we come together with the private sector to co-locate and collaborate around our knowledge assets. It's a lot of ASU speak in that, but basically what that means is how we share what our faculty and our students know with the rest of the world, and how do we put that to productive use, through licensing agreements for IP or startups or all of those types of things. Very important to us here to be able to diversify the employment base of the Valley, where historically, you could make a good middle-class living in, residential real estate or the hospitality industry, et cetera. But of course, today's economy is global, highly competitive across the world. And so it's a knowledge-based economy. That means you need to know more. That's why education becomes increasingly important. And so this whole ecosystem that we're building is part of helping Arizonans and their economy succeed. So we are constantly building things. This fall, we actually opened 4 major facilities on 3 different campuses in the Valley for the fall semester. Tim and his colleagues told me that probably wasn't the best idea. We got it done, we hit our marks, but it was a challenge, and we've got great people, but they worked really hard doing that. And so we have various types of projects, won't necessarily go into all that, but here are some pictures of them here. Downtown Tempe is now the 2nd major urban center in Arizona, with obviously downtown Phoenix being the first. So we're kind of building our own neighborhood as we go, and it'll be around us for probably the next century. So we're very careful about that. On the upper left there is the Walton Center for Planetary Health. Hope you get to see it in person. It's an example of biophilic design, so it's kind of cool. On the lower right there is the Novus Innovation Corridor. So that's one of our innovation zones, Novus being the Latin word for new. And I will say a little bit more about that because I think it's something different. This originally started actually, and you might be interested in this in terms of facility strategy, finance strategy, as a way to reinvest in our intercollegiate athletics infrastructure. All of our performance venues and the other things that go into big-time college athletics these days. I suspect that many of you are feeling the same pressures that we do here in terms of the arms race that's going on there and trying to stay competitive and provide entertainment and alumni and community engagement, et cetera, et cetera. So Arizona is not a state that invests heavily in a lot of public activities, certainly including higher education. It is a place, however, if you can figure out how to do something for yourself, self-help, typically no one will tell you you can't do that. And having worked a variety of places, I feel like I have a sense of how that works across the country. And if you can figure out how to do it here, you're probably going to be able to. So basically what the Novus Innovation Corridor is a mixed-use development where we're going to attract tenants from the private sector, and it's a truly mixed use, so it is corporate office buildings, Class A corporate office buildings for the most part. It is multifamily residential, and it is hospitality and entertainment. All of our major athletic performance venues sit within Novus, so it's really live, work, and play. Here you see our urban park that we're just about to finish up in the next probably 6 weeks or so here. Name brand restaurants around an urban park with an entertainment space and a performance venue next to multifamily residential and Class A commercial office. That sits at the northwest corner of University, which this building sits on, and rural. Probably not really aptly named anymore. It's not very rural, but northwest corner of that intersection, you have a time when you're walking around, you can kind of see what's happening there and what ultimately will happen. But wanted to just talk a little bit about some of the strategies that we try to use. As I said, we don't get a lot of state investment. When I came here in the fall of 2008, the state of Arizona invested about $500 million, $500 million a year in support for Arizona State University. And about January of that first year, we started to realize there was something that wasn't quite right. Well, now we look on that time period between 2008 and 2012 as what? The Great Recession. And so in that 4-year period, we lost about 40% of our state investment, $200 million annually. It's never come back. And we've been fast growing. If you factored that on a per full-time equivalent student basis, we lost 51% of our state investment. So we really had to reinvent our business model. We also are not a relatively high income or wealthy state, and so what we didn't want to do, given our mission of inclusion, to really jack up our tuition rates. And we've been able to maintain reasonable tuition rates over the last 8 years. We have averaged a tuition increase of 1.8% annually for Arizona resident students. So we feel good about that. What it meant is we had to develop a whole lot of other ways of generating resources. And so some of those are kind of up on this screen here. One of them is we're fortunate that we have a fair amount of land that I'm sort of embarrassed to say we weren't using very well. In fact, much of it sort of sat there. It's like, well, if we ever need to build on it, it's there. And in the meantime, I guess it's okay if people want to leave their old tires on it so that they don't have to take them to the dump and pay a tipping fee. Really not very wise in terms of our thinking. So we realized that this was an underleveraged asset and that we could use it to create a return for the university, which we've tended to do. So part of that is these innovation zones that I mentioned. This building is another example. You're actually on the campus right now. The university owns this land. We long had wanted to have a 4-star hotel conference center because we could do things like this. We could bring in more people, and our faculty have all these organizations and work that they're involved with that they wanted to show off. And so we needed a place to do that. This was actually a partnership with the city of Tempe. We're right next to downtown Tempe, and they wanted the same thing. And so we were able ultimately to attract the Omni Hotel that we're sitting in today with the conference center, about 35,000 square feet of meeting space. The university actually owns the conference center. That was sort of our contribution to the partnership. But we receive ground lease proceeds from the land long term. And it has allowed us to create this convening space, which is really fundamental to what a big university does in terms of sharing knowledge and innovation. Next door to us, if you notice to the east there is that big twin tower complex. That is Mirabella. That is our lifelong learning community, and you see a picture of it there in the middle frame. We're committed at ASU to learning across the age continuum. So, historically, okay, you probably go to kindergarten, then you go to elementary, middle, high school. If you're fortunate, you may go to college, maybe even a graduate degree, and then I'm done. Well, the world isn't that way today. We have to be continuous learners throughout our lives. And so in order to do that, we wanted to help facilitate that in a variety of ways. So a lot of the things I've already talked about in terms of ASU Online and our new learning enterprise that we created where all those learners can access these various opportunities are part of that. But Mirabella is as well. And that is for people who are 60 and older. Some people might call us a retirement community, but what I can tell you is the people who live there, many of them are still working full-time, some part-time, some, yes, retired, but they are totally engaged with the life of the university. So they're mentoring students. If you're a mechanical engineering student, what better than to be mentored by somebody who is CEO of an engineering firm for 25 years? They are involved in various studies about, aging and senior health and nutrition and those types of things. They can go to classes, either audit them or take them for credit. They can advise students. They can go to our cultural activities, to our athletic activities, et cetera. So it's wonderful. And the facility itself, if you have an opportunity to see it, it's absolutely gorgeous in terms of the condos that are available. A little over 300 units of those. And they have a library, they have a fitness center, they have 5 restaurants, on and on. So it's a great place to be. And you can actually see a lot of the residents walking their dogs early in the morning, earlier than most of our students are out, unless they're just coming home, and just enjoying the campus. So it's wonderful to have them. They're deeply engaged, and it's part of our strategy. And yes, many of those people come to love the university and want to help the university further its mission, and they have the resources to do that in a lot of cases. So that's another thing that we do. One strategy that has been very important for us is something that we call internally OPM, other people's money. And so public-private partnerships, I think maybe Joe Lashevsky is going to talk a little bit more about this later, but being able to deliver facilities using resources that don't end up limiting our debt capacity in other ways, because we don't get regular capital appropriations either to build new facilities or to maintain existing ones from the state. It all has to be part of our business model, and we typically borrow dollars and pay it back over time to do that. So if we can work with partners, we've done over $1.5 billion of delivery of living and learning facilities for our students. As I said, we're trying to become more residential. We house about 17,000 students today. In fact, on the southeast corner of this block that this building is on, you will see there's a big construction project. Well, that is a living learning facility for our Herberger Institute of Design and the Arts students. So when it's done, it's going to look rather interesting, rather artsy. So I hope you can get a chance to see that when it's done. But that is being designed, financed, and constructed according to the university's specifications, but by our partner. So we've done about $1.5 billion of those types of projects. We've done them on all 4 of our campuses. We've done a similar thing with energy projects. So we've done over $500 million of energy projects, wind energy, solar energy. We started with solar. If you can't figure out how to make solar work in the Valley of the Sun, I don't know where that's going to work. And we've been able to do that in a way that has built on our commitment to sustainability. So little humble brag here, but people here have done a great job with this in terms of our built environment. We feel like that's really, really important because we teach and we research around sustainability. If our institutional sustainability practices are crappy, well, guess what? You're like the emperor with no clothes. So we are actually, if any of you follow the ASHE STARS methodology, we are a platinum institution. And the last time I checked, which was this morning, we were #1 in the world on that ranking of institutional sustainability practices. I think we have 69, if I recall correctly, the number was an earlier slide, LEED certified buildings of various types, including our renovation zones. And the commercial developers that we partner with early on told us, you can't do that, you can't require that, nobody will pay for that. Well, guess what? That was wrong. And every single one of our buildings and renovation zones also is LEED certified. So we've been able to do that. We're also #1 in the US on the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. So we're doing, I think, a good job there, and that's allowed us to do some of these other things with energy. We need to do more with our post-consumer waste stream and more with our water use, especially in the desert here. But I think we're off to a good start, and that just is part of the way we think, and there's actually ways to partner with people to do well there. So I will also mention that many of these projects that we do, we try to do them, we don't just go out in the middle of the desert someplace and do something. They're always sort of double bottom line things. They make sense from a financial standpoint, but they also make sense programmatically and from the standpoint of our mission. So the 2 buildings that I mentioned here would be examples of that. What we do with online learning would be an example of that. And so what we've tried to do is we've tried to relieve the demand on our balance sheet, on our requirements for capital by doing a lot of this partnering, and it's allowed us to scale much faster than we would otherwise be able to do. So Tim can tell you that it's a daily challenge. When you have 30 million gross square feet of built environment, there's always something going on, something that isn't quite right. We were visiting about a couple of them just a few minutes before this session. One of the things that I'm kind of excited about, I remember having a discussion And I see you guys still actually sit together. So Alex Conan, who I think was on this panel the other day too, was Tim's immediate predecessor. And then he always wanted to be a cowboy, and they had the opportunity to move to Nashville, and he just couldn't resist it. But he does come back and visit us now and again, which we appreciate. But I remember having a discussion with Alex and his predecessor. So many times when something goes wrong, we have all these very sophisticated laboratories with electronic equipment, and but we also have this network of fluids that run around in pipes, and sometimes those pipes spring a leak. And when they do, you get something I call collateral damage. And when something leaks on the second floor and it goes on for 8 hours because it happens in the middle of the night, and it goes down into a computer center, well, guess what? That is really expensive in terms of all the damage that it does. And I would say there's got to be some way that some of that equipment, that we can make it smart so it can tell us, hey, I know my preventive maintenance schedule isn't up yet, but I'm about to fail. And if you don't want me to leak, hundreds of thousands of gallons into the computer center down below me, then you better get over here. And so that's, as I'm sure you're all experts, starting to happen now. And I'm like, well, it's about time, but the fault detection and diagnostics using predictive analytics, and now, artificial intelligence is here. And so we can build more and more of this intelligence into all of our building systems and components. And I think that's going to ultimately save us a tremendous amount of money. Now, it's pretty expensive early on, but when you think about the potential of this over time, especially if you can build it into your design standards, I think it's a really exciting opportunity, just like we're talking about some of these new technologies revolutionizing the way we live and work in other areas. I think it can do that in our business also. And we're at a time and a place where there's just a tremendous amount of pressure on higher education, right? Public, private, large, small, doesn't matter. People are kind of saying, well, are you sure it's really worth it? I'll tell you two things. One, most of us, when you talk to individual people, even the ones who ask you about this, you say, well, what'd your child do? Well, my child went to college, and they went to a campus, and that's important to do, but, yet they're still skeptical, right? And there's more of them than there used to be. You used to see the public opinion polls. Gallup does these all the time. Higher education was right up there with your minister in the military in terms of trust. Guess what? We aren't any place close to that today. We're not Congress yet, but we aren't at the top anymore. And so it's a problem. And we need to figure out ways of reassuring people that it is an investment worth making. And so it does fit into what all of you do on a basis. And you have very hard jobs, in my opinion. It's a little bit, I would say we're basically in the utility business, and I don't mean that in the literal sense. What I mean is that people expect the stuff that you're all responsible for to just work. They don't spend any time thinking about it. If you come into the office in the morning and you pick up the phone and there's dial tone, no one does the happy dance. But guess what? If you pick up the receiver and there's no dial tone, what just became the most important thing at the entire university? And guess what? There's some idiot out there who screwed up, and I'm really mad about it. And so, the highs are usually not that high, and the lows can be pretty low. So figuring out ways to be smarter about this and making sure we're deploying our resources effectively, really important. Probably more we could talk about, but I see I've got about 3 minutes left, and I will stop, and I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that anybody might have out there.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Now, folks like me who are in facilities have bosses back home who are probably wondering, why'd you go spend 2 days of your time outside of this campus when I have leaking pipes? So what kind of advice would you give someone like me to go back to give our CFO in terms of innovative practices and these outside the box thinking types of successes that you've had at ASU?
Yeah. So Joe stopped me before this presentation and said, you're going to get up there and just tell them how you never say anything but no all day long. I said, well, I said once yes. I said yes. It was about a month ago, but I said yes to something. I think, what you have to do is you have to, remember how CFOs think. They're always talking about return on investment. And guess what? They have problems too, just like you guys do. In many organizations, facilities tends to report up through the CFO, not always, but many times. And so they own all that, but guess what else they own? They own trying to make all the rest of the university happy. The faculty members who want new labs, the athletics department who wants a new performance facility, student affairs that wants a new residence hall, whatever it is that the president wants, on and on and on. And so I guess my advice for you, I don't know if it's world changing, but I think trying to figure out what the return on investment can be for something. And it may be capital, sometimes it is. And in today's world, capital investments in many cases, I think, are more cost-effective long-term life cycle, maybe than investments in human capital. But figure out what the return on investment is as much as you possibly can. If you have you have an HVAC system that literally isn't working and it's 110 degrees outside, which it is here, you don't really have a lot of time to debate the return on investment there. You have to fix it. But there are many, many big things you're doing. For example, we're talking about decarbonization and how we might do that, and with the scale that we have, it's a very, very big number. We're probably going to have to do it over time. I'm convinced we will do it. It's just a matter of how and when. But I think we have to be able to speak, that person's language. As weird as their brains might be, you have to try to, speak to things that are important to them that they're accountable for. I hope that's helpful.
We have one more question over here.
I've been following Arizona higher ed ever since I sent my daughter to Arizona State to go to school. So I remember the Great Recession, and I remember the catastrophic headlines in the Chronicle of Higher Education. And I don't want you to throw mud at anybody, but why was Arizona State so much better able to weather the transition than your counterparts in Tucson, for example? Is there a cultural underpinning, or what do you think the difference was?
So I've been asked variations of that question a lot, and let me say first that the University of Arizona is our sister institution. It's a great research university. They ran into some challenges, and I think they fall into one of three categories, and you have to be hitting on all three of these cylinders. And it's people, in other words, having the people with the right talent, the right human capital. Process, you have to have sound processes, and I think there were some challenges there. And technology, you absolutely have to be able to leverage technology effectively. And so, if you're missing one or both, or maybe pieces of all three of those, you're going to have some problems. So these are challenging times for everybody. And President Crow, my boss, has been here for 22 years. I've been here for 16, and I do think there is something for being able to develop a plan and a strategy and being able to execute it over a significant period of time. There's nothing worse than being an organization that whipsaws every 2 or 3 years. And guess what the average tenure of a university president is today? About 5 years. You learn where the bathrooms are in the first year, you're kind of exiting the last year, which gives you 3 years. That's not a recipe for getting that right. And so being able to figure out how to put that plan in place and then being able to execute it over a significant period of time, I think, is part of that.
Beautiful. All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Olsen, for joining us. Thank you.